We live in a very superstitious society. So even when we hear terrible news of people losing their jobs or losing the breadwinners of their household, then forced into relative pennilessness because they can no longer afford to feed themselves or afford their rent and have to beg friends or family and friends to pay for their children's school fees, we think to ourselves, God forbid, thank God that is not me. Well, we're not praying that anything bad will happen to us. You agree with me that sometimes bad things happen to good people. So why not take actions to help you survive financial emergencies? Hello, my name is Tracy. For a while now, we've been working towards eliminating financial flaws. And today, I'm going to reveal top secrets on how you can survive financial emergencies. Before we dive into it, I'd like for you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Click on the red button down there and don't forget to turn on the notification bell just so you don't miss out each time I upload a new video. That being said, let's dive into the video. Smart individuals don't wait for financial surprises. I see people who earn a lot, more than enough to sustain them, but each time they meet with a financial emergency, they realize that they do not have all it takes to solve that particular problem. They end up borrowing. That's because they lacked emergency funding. Building an emergency fund is the cushion that acts as your financial safety net. Before you splurge, before you spend unnecessarily, make sure that you have set aside at least 6 to 9 months of your living expenses. Save it up for emergencies. Well, mind you, an emergency fund is not the fund that you intend to use and invest into something that would yield more money. It is supposed to be acting as your financial cushion that protects your long-term investments from unexpected short-term expenses. It is there for emergencies. If you're someone who is proactively investing, the truth is, if you do not have an emergency fund that is set aside, whenever you're faced with financial difficulties, you may be tempted to go withdraw your long-term investment to sort out unexpected short-term expenses, which is not a good sign. That is why you see people selling their houses, selling their lands, just to be able to meet up with a short-term expense like rent, payment of school fees, something that is not going to bring in more revenue. I'm here to reveal to you the best way to survive financial emergencies, and this should be seriously taken into consideration. I remember when it was time for me to write the final exams that you write before you graduate from high school, there was literally no money to pay for my WAEC fees. I remember my dad had to sell one of his lands to pay for that fee. I don't know if he sold it for 300,000 naira at the time. I'm not sure the exact amount, but I can tell you that right now the value of that land has increased. While I am entirely grateful that he had to sell his property to pay for my fees so that I can write that exam, the truth is, if my dad was properly informed, imagine that he had emergency funds set aside to meet up with expenses like this without having to sell his land. The truth is, he would have made profit from that particular asset. To avoid this, especially if you do not want your long-term investments to be affected by short-term expenses, you need to set aside an emergency fund. Some people set aside emergency funds from the proceeds from their long-term investments. While that may have worked for some persons, it may not work for the other person. So to be on the safe side, even before you start buying lands, properties, first try and set aside at least 6 to 9 months of your living expenses. Then you can proceed to invest long term. In a separate video, I'm going to talk about investments, let you know how you can go about it. But for now, let's talk about how to build an emergency fund. These are practical steps that you can follow, and I want you to take note of it. Number one, I need you to calculate how much you would need to survive, assuming you lost your job or income from your business. Figure out what your living expenses would add up each month. I'd like for you to factor in essentials like utilities, electricity bill, transportation costs. Doing this is going to help you arrive at a particular figure. Multiply that figure by 6 or 9 months, as the case may be. Number 2, strictly define emergencies. Now when we talk about emergencies, I don't mean an impromptu trip to Dubai, or let's say those luxurious items that is suddenly on sale, and because you want to avail the discounted price, you decide to touch your emergency fund and use it to buy those items. Those are not emergencies. Please strictly define emergencies. We're talking about unexpected hospital bills, rent, payments of fees, things like that. Do not factor in anything that you can do without. Factor in things that are truly emergencies. And I need you to make up your mind that the emergency fund that you're going to set aside, you are not going to touch it. That is why I said strictly define emergencies, without considering the things that do not qualify as emergencies. And this will bring us to the third point. Shore up or boost your emergency funds with windfalls. I will explain. Windfalls could include cash gifts, bonuses from work or from extra work done, things like that. Take for instance, anytime you receive money that you are not expecting, I want you to decide to take out a portion of that money and top up your emergency funds. That way you are boosting your emergency funds. Number 4, don't put your emergency fund in a risky asset class. Keep in mind that your emergency fund is different from what you're supposed to use for investment. Don't mix it up. So I suggest that you open a separate account, and that account should be where you stock up your emergency funds. You have that account, you know that you have that account. You don't act like there is money there because you're not supposed to use that money for things that do not qualify as emergency. So it's more like you have money but you don't have money. That kind of mindset. Don't ever keep it at the back of your mind that, oh, I have money here, I can use it to top up, I can use it to eat food, I can use it to go out, I can use it to go on a trip. No, it is true, you have a separate account, you are stocking up emergency funds there, yeah, but just act as though there is no money. Like, just act as though you don't even have any money set aside. Just keep it there, leave it, let it sit in that account. You are only allowed to touch it when you're faced with emergencies. And please, again, define your emergency. Don't forget that point. I need you to be disciplined not to touch the money you are growing in your emergency fund account. Now, another way to maximize benefit and even earn from your emergency fund is to put it in a high interest savings account. Some people do fixed deposit accounts, but I don't suggest a fixed deposit account because in case of an emergency, you may not be allowed to withdraw the money and use it to sort out your emergency. So put it in a high interest savings account. That way you can earn interest by just allowing your emergency fund to sit there. So more like the money is sitting there and it's making you more money. No matter how little you need it, leave it there. Don't touch it. Let's talk about the importance of setting aside an emergency fund. If you're someone who has already made significant investments long term, instead of spending the proceeds from that long term investment, how about setting it aside for your emergency fund? When you have a minimum of 6 to 9 months of your living expenses set aside for emergencies, you can then start feeding on the proceeds from that long-term investment. That way you wouldn't have to withdraw your long-term investment because of an emergency situation and then having to start afresh to save up money that you will use for investment. No, you don't want that. Don't be in a hurry to leave. Like this video if you gain values from it. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to drop your comments in the section below. If you're tired of spending more than you're actually earning, you want to track your expenses, to enable you save more or even set some money aside as emergency fund, I've highlighted proven steps that is going to help you track your expenses. All the details and information that you need to help you track your expenses is in the video suggestion right here. I need you to click on it and I'll see you in this video right now.